It began with something I wasn't supposed to see. Not a text, not a lipstick stain, not the classic signs people talk about. It was a glance. A very specific glance. One that lasted no more than 2 seconds, but cracked something open in my head that never sealed back up. We were at a backyard birthday party for one of her coworkers. I didn't know anyone. She floated through the crowd like it was a runway, smiling too wide, brushing shoulders with men who acted like I wasn't even there. She introduced me to some of them as this guy. Not my husband. Not even by name. Just this guy. I laughed it off. That laugh, fake, polite, hollow. The kind that tastes like metal in your throat. And then, while she was pouring herself a second glass of white wine, I saw her look across the patio. It was quick, but not careless. She scanned the crowd like a predator checking for prey, locked eyes with a tall guy in a slate-gray button-up, and gave him the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. That subtle, smug kind. It wasn't flirty. It was claiming. Like she was saying, I see you. You're mine tonight. He didn't smile back. He just nodded once, slowly, like an agreement had been made in silence. After that, she was colder with me. Not openly rude, but mechanical. She stopped holding my arm. She leaned away when I whispered anything. I told myself she was tired. I told myself it was the wine. I told myself whatever I needed to in order not to explode in front of strangers. The car ride home was the kind where the silence is a third passenger. I kept my eyes on the road, but my brain was somewhere else. Rewinding, replaying, analyzing every moment of that party. She was humming some pop song under her breath like nothing happened. My hands tightened on the steering wheel not from anger, but restraint. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. The moment came the next morning. A random Tuesday. I'd taken the day off. She thought I was at work. She left her laptop open. I wasn't snooping. I swear that. I was looking for a recipe we'd saved together. Some pasta dish she liked. But then a tab blinked at me. Messaging app. Not one I recognized. Not Messenger, not iMessage. Something called Nebula Chat. Who even uses that? She'd forgotten to log out. And there it was. A chat thread. No saved name. Just a black circle with the letter R as the avatar. The most recent message? Last night was insane. I think he knows. You should have seen his face. And her reply? Timestamped just 10 minutes before she left the house. He's clueless. He still asks if I want coffee like nothing's wrong. Honestly, I almost feel bad. Almost. I didn't feel the floor disappear. I didn't fall to my knees. I didn't even get angry. I closed the laptop gently, stood up, walked to the window. I remember the color of the sky, pale indifferent gray, birds moving in V formation, a neighbor pulling out of their driveway with a golden retriever sticking its head out the window. Everything looked the same, but something in me had split like a bone snapping clean under pressure. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I started cleaning the kitchen, methodically, almost obsessively. I wiped the counter 5 times, rearranged the spice rack, alphabetized the teas. I needed control over something, anything. The plan formed quietly, without announcement. I wasn't going to accuse her. Not yet. No, this needed precision. Not just revenge, exposure. She had built a mask so complete that even her friends called us relationship goals. They posted pictures of us like we were a brand. I wanted to peel that mask off in the brightest light possible. Let her try to laugh then. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying or replaying the messages. I just sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the hallway she always walks down when she comes home. I needed to understand who she really was. This woman who kissed me before she left. This woman who wrote "almost feel bad" while sipping the coffee I made her. By 3 a.m. I had read the entire chat history. It wasn't just recent. It stretched back nearly 5 months. At first, the messages were cautious, guarded. But as the weeks passed, they became bold. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't even some guy she randomly met. No, he was someone she worked with 3 years ago. They'd reconnected accidentally at a conference. One friendly drink turned into emotional confessions, inside jokes, and then, I'll never forget this one message. Her words, clear as crystal. He's not like you. He listens. He makes me feel dangerous in the best way. You know what I mean? No, I didn't know what she meant, but I was starting to. Piece by piece, the puzzle turned from confusion to clarity. This wasn't an affair built on need. It was born out of thrill. The more she got away with it, the more alive she felt. And he wasn't some lovesick fool. He was methodical, strategic. He played into her bitterness like a violinist. He'd send quotes about freedom, independence, self-love, as if her life with me was a cage and he was offering her the key. She ate it up, every word. He twisted her thoughts until she believed I was the villain, that she was entitled to this double life. She met a friend, someone who twisted her thoughts, turned her against me. She laughed behind my back, betrayed me without blinking. I stayed quiet, but now, she'll face everything she's earned. Wednesday evening, I set the trap. She came home in her usual act, bright eyes, fake cheer. Long day, she sighed, tossing her bag on the couch. You wouldn't believe the traffic. The lie slid off her tongue so smoothly it could have been bottled and sold. Yeah, I said calm. We should talk about that. She blinked. Talk about what? The traffic. Confusion flickered. Then, just for a flash, her expression changed. A half-second glitch, her face tightened like a mask slipping for a heartbeat. What's that supposed to mean? You tell me, I said, and handed her the printed transcript of the entire Nebula chat conversation. Every word. Highlighted. Dated. Indexed. She didn't even look at it. Instead, she smirked. Not a guilty smirk. Not an apologetic one. It was the kind of smirk you see on people who know they're caught but don't care. People who think they're smarter than consequences. Oh, you went through my messages? She said, like I'd gone through her purse. Wow, that's low. Lower than sleeping with someone while lying to me every day? She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. Don't act like you were some perfect husband. That's when it hit me. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending. She had rewritten the story so completely in her mind that I was now the one at fault. I wasn't attentive enough. I didn't make her feel desired enough. I didn't listen. I laughed. One dry, hollow laugh. That's it, I asked. That's all you've got? What do you want me to say? She snapped. That I'm a monster? That I should beg? You've already decided what you want to hear. No, I said, stepping closer. I've decided what I want to do. She looked at me like she expected some dramatic outburst. Shouting, maybe a demand for names and dates. But I was past that. I already called your mother, I said. Told her everything. She's not on your side. The color drained from her face. I also spoke to HR at your job. Turns out, relationships with former contractors are against your company policy, especially when they're still consulting on projects. And then came the moment I was waiting for. Her smirk cracked. Not fully. Just enough to see the terror behind it. You're bluffing. Am I? I slid my phone across the table. Open email. Screenshot attached. Read receipt confirmed. She didn't touch it. Didn't say a word. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch her. I just let the silence close in. Pack a bag, I said finally. Tonight. I live here too, she said. Weakly this time. Not anymore. And I walked out, leaving her there in the kitchen where she used to dance barefoot to 80s playlists and ask me to twirl her. Now, she was just a stranger in a house she'd set fire to, surprised that it finally burned. She didn't leave that night. I told her to. Made it perfectly clear. But when I came back from the guest room the next morning, she was still there. Sitting cross-legged on the couch like she was meditating, sipping coffee from my favorite mug. She didn't even look up when I walked in. So now you're just going to kick me out of my own life? She said, eyes locked on some daytime news segment playing on mute. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My silence was the response. She set the mug down slowly, deliberately. You know, you're not the only one who gets to feel hurt. That was her opening move. The game had changed. She knew the affair was exposed. Her job was at risk. The truth spreading fast among the people she thought she controlled. But she wasn't going down easy. Now it was all about reframing, warping everything into a story where she was the victim, where I was just as toxic, where this was some mutual collapse instead of what it really was, her betrayal drawn out and sharpened like a blade. The audacity made something in me stir. Not rage, clarity. Cold, cutting clarity. I sat across from her. You're right. You can feel hurt. But you don't get to weaponize it. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You've been distant for years. You work late. You barely talk." I cut her off. "I didn't cheat." She blinked. "Just once. But it was enough. The thing about liars? When you corner them, they don't panic. Not at first. They calculate. They pivot. And she was damn good at it." She exhaled, steeled her voice, softened her tone. "Look, I made a mistake. I won't deny that. But it wasn't just about him. I felt invisible. Like I was screaming underwater and you couldn't hear me. There it was again. The story. The revision. She wanted me to believe this was emotional neglect. That I somehow drove her into his arms by not being enough. It was manipulative, and honestly, it might have worked if I hadn't seen those messages. If I hadn't read how she laughed about me, how she called our life performance art. That word stuck with me. Performance art. I stood up. "You know what's funny? You call this a mistake. But it's the most consistent thing you've done in years. All those nights out. All the excuses. The sudden vacations with friends I never met. You weren't screaming underwater. You were busy putting on a show and hoping I wouldn't notice the script." She finally snapped. "Fine. Yes, I did it. And maybe I did enjoy it. Maybe I liked feeling wanted for once. Then go back to him," I said. "See how long that lasts when there's no secrecy left to thrill you." She didn't move. That's the thing. She didn't want him, not really. She wanted the game. The duality. The thrill of deception. And now that was over, so was the appeal. I could see it in her eyes. The way they flicked to the window, to the clock, to the phone she hadn't touched in hours. She was calculating the fallout. She'd underestimated me. Thought I'd collapse, beg, shout, cry. But I had spent the night building something better than revenge. I started documenting everything. Not just the affair, but the financial discrepancies. She'd been siphoning money from our joint account into a business account under her name. I had spreadsheets now, passwords, emails forwarded to a secure backup. Her empire of lies was stitched together with threads I could now pull loose one by one. And I wasn't going to hide any of it. That afternoon I met with a lawyer. She was sharp, direct, told me what I already knew. I had every advantage now, especially if this went public. We drafted the separation documents that same day. When I got back, she was still there. Same seat, same smug face. "You're really doing this?" she asked. "Already done," I said, and dropped the envelope in her lap. "Sign it. No discussion, no therapy, no chance." "You burned that bridge," I said, then danced on the ashes. She didn't cry, didn't scream, just stared at the papers with that ice-cold expression. Like a chess player who realizes they've lost 3 moves ago but keeps playing out of pride. "Everyone will know," she said softly. "I'm counting on it." That was the last thing I said before walking out again. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. She wanted to see me broken. Instead, she saw me disappear and take everything she thought she'd stolen with me. The next morning felt like standing in a house after a hurricane. Everything intact on the surface, but nothing where it used to be. The walls were still there, the furniture untouched, but the silence had weight now. Every creak in the floorboard felt deliberate. Every breath a reminder of how fake the air used to be. She was gone when I woke up. No note, no message, just a hollowed-out space in the closet and the faint, acidic smell of her perfume lingering in the hallway. She'd packed fast and light. A few drawers half open, some hangers still swaying slightly like she'd yanked clothes off them in a panic. I didn't call her. I didn't need to. I knew exactly where she went. He lived in a condo uptown. Newer building. Big windows. Gym on the roof. He used to brag about it in the messages she didn't think I'd ever see. She described it like a fantasy. Said it was a reset button on life. What a joke. You don't reset by dragging your rot into someone else's bed. I didn't go there. I wasn't about to turn this into a scene. Let her taste what it's like to live with the man who helped torch her life from the shadows. Let her try to mold herself into his world. It wouldn't last. I could already see it unraveling. Instead, I made my own move. First thing I did? Changed every password. Every shared account, every streaming service, even the damn air purifier app. Then I blocked her on everything. Not just her number, her mother's, her sister's, her friends who had smiled in my face while probably knowing the truth. Gone. By noon, I was at the bank. Solo account. Closed the joint card. Froze the shared credit line. The banker tried not to look curious as I handed him the documents. Her signature on the separation agreement bold and bitter in black ink. She signed this? He asked. She did, I said. Didn't read a word of it. Next stop, her job. I hadn't just told HR about the affair. I shared screenshots. Timeline. Dates that overlapped with official client events, some of which included hotel stays billed under the company. The fallout was immediate. I didn't ask for the update. Someone from her department leaked it to me voluntarily. Word travels fast when people pretend to be professional saints and get caught swimming in mud. Apparently, she'd been put on administrative review. Apparently, so had he. The same day, I got a message request from someone I didn't recognize. A woman with a name that sounded vaguely familiar. Took me a second to place her. It was his ex. She'd seen my posts. Put two and two together. Her first line? So I guess they're still doing what they used to do. Still. As in, this wasn't his first time. Or hers. That changed something in me. I had been playing defense. Cleaning up the mess. Holding composure. Now I was angry. Not loud angry. Not the kind that smashes plates or breaks phones. The kind of angry that strategizes. The ex and I talked. She told me things I hadn't known. Things that didn't show up in chat logs or timelines. Like how he once convinced her she was too emotional every time she caught him lying. How he spun her friends against her, made her feel unstable. Classic manipulation tactics. Sound familiar? It was like someone was holding up a mirror. We made a plan. Not for revenge, but for clarity. She sent me screenshots from her time with him. Dates, photos, audio clips. I made a new document. A timeline. Not just of my story, there's a history of manipulation. Pattern, plain and irrefutable. It was time for her to see the whole picture. I printed it. Bound it. Simple black cover. No title. Just a note tucked inside the first page. This is who you chose. Then I mailed it. Not to her. To her father. The only person in her family who ever treated me with honest decency. 2 days later, he called me. I don't know what to say, he said, voice shaking. I thought you were exaggerating. But this is evil. She made her choices, I said. Now she can live with them. Do you want me to reach out to her? No, I said. She'll reach out when the tower falls. And she did. That night. Blocked number. I let it ring. Then again. And again. Then my email pinged, subject line in all caps. You went too far. I didn't open it. She burned the bridge. Buried the ashes. Laughed while standing on the grave. Now she's choking on the smoke. She showed up at my door 2 days later. No warning. No call. Just the sound of her car pulling into the driveway at dusk. The way she used to when everything was normal. I watched her through the blinds. She stood by the door for a full minute before knocking, holding something in her arms. A box, maybe a bag. I didn't move. The knock came again. Soft, measured, almost rehearsed. I opened the door halfway. She looked stripped. Not in some poetic, tragic way. More like someone who'd been told a performance was over and now didn't know who to be without the lights. I need to talk, she said. Her voice had that brittle edge, like she was holding back a scream or a breakdown. Maybe both. I don't, I replied and started to shut the door. She wedged her foot in. Bold move for someone who'd lost every ounce of leverage. Please, she whispered. Just 5 minutes. I stepped back. Not for her. For me. I needed to see what she looked like when the walls came down. I needed to know, deep in my bones, that I hadn't overplayed the damage. She walked in like the house belonged to someone else. Her eyes scanned the room like she was trying to remember where things had been, what we'd shared, what she'd set on fire. She didn't sit. She stood near the kitchen island, gripping the edge with white knuckles. They suspended him, she said, not meeting my eyes. He might lose his contract. I raised an eyebrow. You mean your reset button? Her jaw tightened. You didn't have to involve other people. Oh, I think I did, I said calmly. You didn't cheat in private. You built a performance. Consider this the standing ovation. That hit. She flinched, ever so slightly. Then she pulled something out of the bag she brought. A photo album. old school with cheap plastic sleeves and handwritten captions. Our road trip to the Grand Canyon. Her 30th birthday. That night we stayed in, ordered too much sushi, and she wore that ugly hoodie I secretly loved. She laid it on the counter like it was evidence in a trial. "I remember this life," she said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't start out trying to destroy it." I stared at her. "But you did anyway." Silence. Then, slowly, she looked up at me. "You were always steady. I used to love that, until I didn't. I don't know why. I got restless. I got bored. And then he made me feel like I could be someone else." There it was. The root. Not romance. Not emotional starvation. Identity theft. She wanted to abandon the version of herself that existed with me, the stable, adult version, for someone shinier, riskier, louder, more chaotic. And now, standing in front of the wreckage, she wanted what? Redemption. I walked over to the counter, closed the album without looking. "You said once you felt invisible," I said. "But you weren't. I saw everything. Every flaw. Every quirk. Every mood swing. And I stayed. You didn't see me. You saw a mirror. And when you stopped liking your reflection, you shattered it." Her lip trembled. Not dramatic. Just a flicker. "I can't fix it, can I?" she said. "No," I said. "But you can leave." She hesitated, maybe thinking I'd change my mind. Maybe waiting for some sentimental flicker to save her. But I was done giving her space to rewrite history. "Take the album," I added. "It's yours. So is everything that comes after." She reached for it slowly, like it burned. Then she turned and left. No crying. No screaming. Just a quiet, tired woman walking back into a world she'd scorched for a man already halfway out the door. As the engine started, I felt nothing. Not relief. Not pain. Just clarity. Like the fog had finally lifted, and beneath it was a road I hadn't walked in years. One I now saw stretched ahead, wide and open. Behind me, a house echoing with silence. Ahead of me, freedom. The house was quiet after she left, but not the haunted kind of quiet. Not anymore. This silence didn't ache. It breathed. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I could hear my own thoughts without them competing with hers. Without the gaslighting. Without the suspicion. Just the steady hum of my own clarity settling in. That night, I didn't drink. I didn't binge-watch anything. I sat down and made a list. A real list. Not of revenge, not of regrets, of reclamation. Things that were mine. My identity. My time. My name in the story that had been rewritten without my permission. At the top, contact the realtor. We had spoken once months ago when we toyed with the idea of moving. She'd wanted a high-rise downtown. I had wanted a yard, something with old bones and history. She made it clear she'd never live like her parents. In a creaky house on a dead-end street. I laughed it off back then. Let her win that one. Now I wanted the creaks. I wanted the imperfections. I wanted something that didn't pretend to be perfect, that didn't shine too bright on the surface only to rot underneath. I emailed the realtor the next morning. Later that afternoon, I got another unexpected message. From him. No name, just a burner-looking account on one of those throwaway chat apps. But the tone? Unmistakable. "Thought you might enjoy this little victory. Just know she'll burn you too. She always does." I stared at it for a long time. He had no idea who he was talking to. He thought I was still wounded. That I needed validation. He thought we were in some warped club of men she betrayed. But he was wrong. I hadn't been burned. I'd been purified. Still, I couldn't resist replying. Funny. For a guy who thought he stole something valuable, you sure are scrambling to give it back. He didn't answer. Of course not. But I wasn't done. I sent one more message. One line. One truth I knew would echo. She didn't choose you. She chose what you represented. The moment you became real, you became disposable. Still no reply. Good. Let him stew in the realization that he was never the endgame. Just the grenade she used to blow her life up. I'd warned my friends that she might reach out, that she might try to paint a new version of events. I'd preemptively told them the truth with proof. Screenshots. Recordings. The timeline. Cold. Clean. Indisputable. She tried to twist it anyway. A week later, a mutual friend forwarded me a message she had sent. He's exaggerating. You know how dramatic he can be. It wasn't even serious with the other guy. I was just escaping. I made a mistake. Sure. But does that mean I deserve to be exiled? Exiled. She really thought this was exile, not consequence. That was the moment I realized. She hadn't learned a thing. She wasn't broken. She wasn't remorseful. She was cornered. And even in the corner, she was still reaching for a script that might earn her sympathy. I replied to the mutual friend with just 2 words. Let her. Let her spin. Let her build a new lie. Let her try to stitch a mask out of old skin. I didn't need to fight her version. The truth stood tall on its own. Documented. Witnessed. Branded into the timeline of my life like a scar I'd never hide. Not out of pride, but out of power. Because scars, unlike wounds, don't reopen. They harden. And under them, something stronger than before. I booked an appointment with a contractor the next day. Told him I wanted to knock out the kitchen wall and open up the space. Something she'd always refused. Said it would ruin the modern lines. But now, I didn't want modern. I wanted real. The first sledgehammer swing cracked the drywall with a satisfying thud. I didn't wear gloves. I wanted to feel it point 2 weeks past. Then 3. I thought the storm had fully rolled through. But she wasn't done. One Thursday afternoon, I got a voicemail. No caller ID, but her voice impossible to mistake. She was crying. Or at least trying to sound like it. You know that breathy, fragmented way people talk when they want to sound broken? That's what it was. Practice tremble, not a real one. I made the biggest mistake of my life, she said, followed by this shaky laugh that made my stomach turn. He's gone. Just left. No warning. And now I don't know who I am anymore. There it was again, the script. Every line designed to trigger guilt. A desperate plea for me to rescue her from a disaster she built. Brick by brick. While she laughed and called it freedom. She'd sent similar messages to a couple of my friends. They shared screenshots. Same tone, same phrasing. He never hit me. But emotional abuse leaves deeper scars. He froze our finances to punish me. He's trying to ruin my reputation. This wasn't remorse. This was an audition. I didn't respond. Instead, I met with a notary. Finalized a document I'd been working on quietly. An affidavit confirming the split, the timeline, and all the relevant details she might try to manipulate. I had it attached to the legal file for the divorce proceedings. Her voice didn't carry the same weight when the receipts were publicly nailed to the wall. And then, another twist. Saturday morning I got a visit. Not from her. From his wife. Yes, wife. Turns out he wasn't just a snake. He was a 2-headed one. She'd found me through mutual work contacts. Corporate world smaller than people think, and wanted answers. She came with her own folder of evidence. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, late-night ride shares billed to an account she didn't even know he had. We talked for an hour. No rage, no tears, just cold, methodical honesty. She'd suspected for months but never had proof. Until now. I gave her everything. Chat logs, screenshots, timelines, even her husband's smug little burner messages. She gave me a look that wasn't grateful. It was vindicated. Before she left, she handed me something. A thumb drive. From my PI, she said. You might find it useful. I waited until she was gone. Plugged it in. There were photos, dozens of them. Him. Her. Together. Different locations. Some recent. Some from as far back as a year ago. And videos. Not explicit. Just intimate. Too intimate for someone who had been telling me it. Just started a few months ago. The entire foundation of her narrative collapsed under that footage. Her mistake was not a misstep. It was a campaign. A long, elaborate play built on lies and ego. I burned a copy. Labeled it plainly, Narrative Insurance. That night she tried again. This time she came to the door. No tears. No shaking voice. Just her, dressed casually, holding 2 coffees like we were still in some phase of reconciliation. I brought peace, she said with a fake smile. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. Took the coffee. Placed it on the porch railing. I spoke with his wife. Her face didn't flinch. But her eyes did. She gave me the full picture. I continued. You want peace? Start by admitting the war you waged. She looked down. I was scared. No, I said. You were arrogant. You thought no one would ever trace it back. You thought you could cheat, lie, laugh behind my back, and still get sympathy when the walls closed in. I didn't want to lose everything. You didn't lose it, I said. You traded it. That silence again. Heavy. Cowardly. She tried a final line. A desperate swing. Do you still love me? I met her eyes. I loved the version of you that never existed. And I turned, went back inside, and locked the door behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't hear her leave. But when I looked out the window an hour later, both coffees were still on the railing. Untouched. Cold. Perfect metaphor. Really. By then, her story had started to splinter. She tried to stay quiet at first. Disappear into some digital fog, hoping the situation would burn out on its own. But silence wasn't her nature. She thrived on attention, even if it was the tragic kind. So, she resurfaced online. First, vague posts. Some lessons come wrapped in pain. Some people aren't who they pretend to be. Then more pointed ones. If you only hear one side of the story, you're part of the problem. I didn't engage. I didn't even look. Friends sent me the screenshots. Her attempt at reputation CPR was both desperate and hilarious. Painting herself as misunderstood, lost, searching. Trying to rebrand her betrayal as growth. But the more she posted, the more people started asking real questions. People who knew us. People who'd seen us together, who'd been at the same events, who remembered the nights I was home alone while she claimed she was recharging. And then the messages started rolling in. From people I hadn't heard from in months. Her coworkers, mutual acquaintances, even an old roommate of hers who now lived 3 states away. All of them said the same thing. She's unraveling. Apparently, R had blocked her, deleted everything, moved out of his condo. Word was he'd accepted a position overseas, one of those contracts that conveniently started right when the fallout began. Gone like smoke, with no intention of picking up the pieces he left behind. Without him, her narrative lost its anchor. She couldn't frame the affair as love anymore. Couldn't pretend it was fate or passion or chemistry. Now it was just betrayal, lying bare and ugly without the veil. Her spiral got messier. She showed up at her sister's place, drunk, tried to climb through a window when they wouldn't let her in. That same week, she was escorted out of a bar for yelling at a guy who accidentally called her the wrong name. 2 days after that, she was fired. Official word was policy violations. But everyone knew what that meant. She burned through every lifeline. Maybe she's just going through something, got replaced with, we should probably keep our distance. Still, I said nothing. Not a post. Not a whisper. I let the truth do what it always does. Fester into light. Then came the call. Blocked number. Again. I picked up, out of curiosity more than anything. You win, she said. That was it. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just bitterness. You win. I paused. Let the silence stretch. Then said, this wasn't a game. That's why you lost. She hung up, but she wasn't done. The next morning I got a package. No return address. Just a manila envelope inside with my name scribbled in the corner. Inside, photos. Dozens. Us through the years. Candid shots. Concerts. Vacations. Her notes scribbled on the back of each one like some tragic memoir. He made me feel safe here. This was the last night I believed I deserved him. I don't know why I ruined this. It wasn't guilt. It was performance. Again, she still thought she could control the story by packaging it in emotion. I put the photos back, resealed the envelope, and threw it out with the rest of the week's trash. Later that day, my realtor called. The house I'd seen, the one with the old porch and the wide windows, it was mine now. Offer accepted. Keys available Monday. The new place wasn't grand, wasn't flashy, but it was mine. No ghosts in the walls. No lies humming in the air. Just real wood, real dust, and space to build something honest. I didn't need to burn anything down. She'd done that all on her own. Now all I had to do was walk away and not look back at the ashes. The day I stepped into the new house, it was raining. Not a storm, just a slow, steady downpour that washed the streets in silver and made the air feel cleaner. It was poetic in a way I didn't ask for, but accepted. No moving trucks, no entourage. Just me, my car, and a few boxes with the only things that mattered anymore. No photos of her. No traces of what used to be us. I left those behind. What I brought was quieter. My old guitar, the journals I hadn't touched in years, the mug I'd bought before I ever met her. Chipped, ugly, perfect. I walked through each room alone. The living room creaked like a ship settling into the harbor. The kitchen smelled faintly of cedar and old apples. The walls weren't painted, the floors were scratched, but it was honest. Every flaw was visible, nothing hidden, nothing pretending. That night, I lit a single lamp, sat on the floor with a sandwich and a beer, and listened to the rain tap against the windows. Not a moment of sadness. Not one. Just peace. But peace has a strange side effect. It leaves space for reflection. And when the noise stops, the truth speaks louder than ever. I started to think, really think, about the months leading up to the affair. Not out of regret, not to blame myself. Just to understand the terrain. To trace how far I'd let things go without asking why. How much of myself I'd handed over, bit by bit, in the name of compromise. It wasn't just her lies. It was my silence. I had seen it. The small shifts. The offhand cruelty. The way she started responding to kindness like it was currency she didn't need anymore. And I let it slide. Because I believed that love meant endurance. That was my mistake. I didn't leave when I should have. I stayed, waiting for a version of her that hadn't existed in years. I gave her the benefit of the doubt while she gave herself to someone else. And still, despite everything, I wasn't bitter. Bitterness would have meant she still had power. But she didn't. She tried once more. Of course she did. A letter this time. Handwritten. Pages and pages of tangled reasoning, memories, half-confessions, and twisted self-awareness. She called it a postmortem. Said she wanted me to understand her, even if I never forgave her. She ended with this: "You were the safest place I ever knew, and I treated you like a stopover. I don't expect peace from you. Just remember me as someone who knew she didn't deserve you, even while she was pretending otherwise." I folded the letter in half. Not out of sentiment. Just to make it fit in the shredder more neatly. Then I went outside. The rain had stopped. The air smelled like new beginnings. I stood on the porch, looked out at the quiet street, and let it all settle, the war, the wounds, the weight. And in that stillness I realized something. She hadn't just lost me. She'd lost the version of herself that I loved. And that version, he only ever existed in my eyes. The final severing didn't come with a bang. Came with silence, the kind that doesn't echo, doesn't follow you, doesn't even whisper. Just disappears the way shadows fade when the light finally shifts. I hadn't expected closure. I hadn't even wanted it. I thought healing would be a struggle, a slow crawl out of the wreckage. But it wasn't like that. It was one morning. I was fixing the crooked curtain rod in my new bedroom. The sun was coming in soft, dust catching in the air. I paused, looked out the window at nothing in particular. Just the neighborhood, a bird on a fence, the world doing what it always does. And in that moment, I realized it had been days since I thought of her. Not in bitterness. Not in longing. Not even in recollection. Just nothing. The woman who had once occupied my entire mental landscape now held no real estate in my head. She was a closed book. A burned file. A chapter that could never be rewritten, because I wouldn't let her pick up the pen again. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I'd evolved from it. And the scars? They weren't warnings. They were blueprints. I found new rituals. New friends who hadn't picked sides but stood with truth. I picked up old hobbies I'd shelved when her needs took priority. I played music again, not because it was therapeutic, but because it sounded good in this house with its imperfect acoustics. I started laughing more, real laughs, the kind that sneak up on you and make you pause afterward because they feel earned. People ask sometimes, would you ever take her back if she truly changed? And my answer never changed. No, because I changed. I no longer measured love by how much pain I could endure. I didn't glorify staying when the door was on fire. I understood now that loyalty isn't a virtue when it's pointed at someone willing to twist it. She met a friend. Someone who twisted her thoughts. Turned her against me. She laughed behind my back. Betrayed me without blinking. I stayed quiet, but now she'll face everything she's earned. That wasn't a threat. It was a prophecy. And it came true. Not through revenge. Not through shouting or exposure, but through absence. Because the worst consequence for someone like her isn't being hated, it's being irrelevant. And so this is where it ends. Not with forgiveness, not with fury, just with a man standing in a house full of sunlight, holding his own name again, breathing without permission, and looking forward. I don't wish her well. I don't wish her harm. I just don't wish her anything. She's gone. And I'm still here, more myself than I've ever been.